On our wedding anniversary, Sarah said important documents were left in our hometown. I drove back, but Mom called to say Dad suddenly had a cerebral hemorrhage and needed $300,000 for surgery. Anxiously, I called Sarah, but she hung up mercilessly. Her childhood sweetheart posted a picture of a cake worth $200,000 on social media, captioned, "A little something from my childhood sweetheart, tonight is our sweet night alone." I suppressed my anger and called Ethan, telling him about Dad's cerebral hemorrhage and the $300,000 needed for surgery. Sarah coldly snatched the phone and said, "I didn't know you were so competitive. I spend $200,000 on Ethan, and you want $300,000? He's finally back home. Can't I even find an excuse to get you out of the way? Can you just give me some peace?" Afraid of being disturbed, she removed the phone's SIM card and turned it off. Ethan Campbell updated his social media again, "Money is where love is. I booked a flight abroad. You want peace, I'll give it to you." By the time I scraped together $300,000, Dad had already been taken to the morgue. Mom fainted on the spot, and I had to handle Dad's funeral arrangements alone. It wasn't until I returned from the hospital that I saw Sarah, who had been missing for a week. She frowned and immediately accused, "I thought you weren't coming back. Where did you take the documents? You never listened to me." Looking at the angry woman before me, my heart turned to ice. In the 7 years we'd known each other, she had always been good to me and never ignored my feelings. I thought this marriage would continue to be sweet and happy until Ethan Campbell suddenly appeared. Just because Ethan Campbell had saved her life, he received preferential treatment everywhere. I didn't care about the past, but she shouldn't have killed my dad for Ethan Campbell's sake. If she hadn't sent me away for Ethan Campbell's birthday, I wouldn't have had to run to our hometown. If I was still in Fairview, Dad's condition would never have been delayed. Seeing my icy expression, Vivian Carter became unhappy. "You're going to make a fuss just because I celebrated Ethan's birthday?" She put the packaged cake on the table. "Ethan even remembered you like cake and specially had a piece packed for you. I didn't expect you to be so ungrateful. I'm allergic to mangoes. Even a small bite would cause difficulty breathing and shock." This cake had a huge mango slice on top, and there were traces of someone having touched the edge of the cake. I sarcastically looked at Vivian. "Thanks for your trouble, packing up leftovers for me." Vivian's face froze for a moment, and then she said stubbornly, "When you were washing dishes at the hotel, didn't you often eat what other people left behind? Ethan and I don't have any contagious diseases. What do you care about?" Vivian's words were like a sharp knife stabbing into my heart, and I looked at her in disbelief. My parents had always been in poor health, and I had worked hard since I was a child, doing part-time jobs to earn tuition. But in my sophomore year, the tuition money I had saved for a long time suddenly vanished after clicking a phishing link. Police said it was a new type of scam, unrecoverable. I had no choice but to work part-time at a hotel, and if I couldn't afford food, I would eat the leftovers from the guests. When classmates saw me, they jokingly called me trash boy, and I didn't dare to argue back, afraid of losing my job. That was the most difficult and darkest period of my life. When I told Vivian about it at the time, she hugged me with heartache and shed tears, vowing to always stand behind me. But now, she used my most painful memories to stab me. She also realized she had said the wrong thing, but I rarely shook off Vivian. "Don't say anything more, let's get a divorce. I'm begging you, just let me go." Vivian froze in place, her eyes wide with disbelief. Why? "Oh, you say?" Dad was lying in the cold cemetery, and Mom was still sleeping in the hospital. I really wasn't in the mood to argue with her. "Let's just end it here." Vivian Carter didn't understand why Brian Smith suddenly brought up divorce. In her eyes, even if she hugged Ethan Campbell in front of Brian Smith, he never showed anything. Moreover, she was just celebrating Ethan Campbell's birthday. Vivian's eyes flickered, and then fell on the report in my hand. After seeing the words on it, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. So it's because Mom is sick and hospitalized. I knew you wouldn't be angry for no reason. Vivian Carter kindly took my hands. I know you're working hard taking care of Mom alone. It was my negligence, but this is Ethan's first birthday since he came back home. His whole family is gone. I can't just ignore him. Mom just fainted from too much stress. It's not a big problem. I'll go to the hospital with you tomorrow to see Mom, okay? Don't be angry, okay? She hugged me affectionately, and smelling the scent of another man on her body, I suddenly felt nauseous. I pushed Vivian away violently and threw up frantically into the trash can. The mango cake she brought back was knocked to the ground and smashed to pieces. Her face darkened, very embarrassed. What do you mean? I'm already tired enough working and supporting the family every day. Can you not be so inexplicably angry? Do you know that everyone outside says you're a money-oriented? I'm the one supporting you. Can you face reality? My eyes met hers coldly. Vivian Carter, you killed my dad. She suddenly sneered. Do you think I'm stupid? Doesn't the report say that Mom is hospitalized? And it's just a minor problem of depression. Who knows who made her angry? What does it have to do with me? Finally, she softened her tone and said, I know you're angry that I didn't spend our wedding anniversary with you, and you also want to compete with Ethan, so I spent a total of $360,000 on his birthday party. How about I transfer $500,000 to you? I looked at her with a cold smile. Get out. Seeing that I wouldn't listen to reason, Vivian Carter gave up on trying to coax me. Whatever, just calm down. The door slammed shut. I laughed. As I laughed, tears silently streamed down my face. I remembered her saying that I was the only one in her heart, and remembered her paying off all my debts like a savior. I remembered those times when we supported each other. Her favoritism and intimacy were juxtaposed with her cold and resolute back at this moment. The phone suddenly vibrated, and a strange number sent me several messages. It was a screenshot. The other person only said their stomach hurt, and Vivian immediately replied that she was on her way. There were also photos of the two of them leaning together. The shirt the man was wearing was my engagement gift to Vivian. The other person sent a message. If I hadn't gone abroad back then, where would your place be? Your dad died and she didn't even care, but she came right away when I said my stomach hurt. Don't you think you're superfluous? Remembering Vivian Carter's words just now to let me calm down, I suddenly felt extremely ironic. So she was in a hurry to see Ethan Campbell, that's how it was. After submitting my application to go abroad, I rushed to the hospital to see Mom. As soon as she saw me, she immediately smiled. Go fulfill your dream, pick it up again, the caregiver will take care of me. Only parents would love me unconditionally, and I threw myself into her arms and cried uncontrollably. I finally made up my mind to leave Vivian Carter. Until the application was approved, Vivian didn't come home. After sending the divorce agreement to her, I started clearing out my belongings from the mansion. After clearing it out, I suddenly realized that the current mansion seemed more harmonious. Perhaps I had been an intruder from beginning to end. When I was calling the professor abroad, Ian Carter suddenly came back with Ethan Campbell. Ethan Campbell exclaimed, and said embarrassedly, Are we disturbing him? Are you on the phone with Jessica Wilson? Vivian Carter snatched the phone with a gloomy face, and after seeing that it was a strange number without even a note, she immediately curled her lips. To make me angry, you deliberately found some sleazy woman to anger me? Jessica Wilson, who Ethan Campbell mentioned, and I just happened to be in the same student council and had spoken a few times. In his mouth, it became as if Jessica Wilson and I had some shady relationship. I clenched my fists, wanting to snatch back the phone, but she directly hung up the phone and glanced at me confidently. Not interested. Stop playing these manipulative games. Ethan and I are just like siblings. My gaze fell on the hickeys on her neck, and I curled my lips sarcastically. Siblings? No blood relation, using the name of siblings, doing everything that lovers do. She didn't allow me to have contact with any opposite sex, but she was unscrupulously flirting with Ethan Campbell, so two-faced that it was outrageous. Vivian Carter said extremely helplessly, "You don't believe anything I say. What do you want me to do? Do I have to force me to break off relations with Ethan? How can you be so cold-blooded? Ethan's family saved my life, and he's alone now. I can't ignore him. Can't you understand me?" Every word was blaming me for not being understanding enough. If it had been before, I would have roared and argued with her, letting her put herself in my shoes. But now, I just looked at her calmly and said, "You bring my dad back to life, and I'll understand you." She rubbed her eyebrows irritably, as if she was very angry. Ethan Campbell affectionately put his arm around Vivian Carter's shoulders. "Vivian and I have been to the hospital. Only your mom is still in the hospital. Your dad is not there at all. Even if you want to gain sympathy, you don't have to curse your own dad to die." Mom's emotions couldn't be stimulated, and she didn't know about Vivian Carter and Ethan Campbell. I grabbed Ethan Campbell's hand with a look of panic. "What do you mean? You went to the hospital to see my mom? What did you say?" Ethan Campbell cried out in pain, and Vivian Carter immediately pushed me away. I crashed into the table with a bang, and my lower back was in so much pain that my face was as pale as snow. Vivian Carter looked at the shallow red mark on Ethan Campbell's arm and immediately frowned and scolded. "What are you doing? I'm your mom's daughter-in-law. What's wrong with me seeing her? Do you think I'm like you who would curse her to die?" I didn't want to pay attention to her, wanting to go to the hospital to see Mom, but my phone was rang urgently. After answering, the other person said urgently, "Is this Mr. Lin? Your mother is dying. She keeps calling Ethan. Is she calling you? Can you come over as soon as possible?" The blood in my whole body ran cold, and I asked again in disbelief, "What did you say?" "Yesterday, the doctor said that Mom's condition was improving and told her to walk around more, and she would be discharged in a few days. How could she suddenly be dying?" I couldn't hear what the other person was saying anymore. I could only hear Mom calling Ethan before she died. I looked at Ethan Campbell in uncontrollable anger, but saw him curl his lips provocatively. The resentment and anger could no longer be endured, and I raised my hand and slapped him hard in the face. Ethan Campbell's head was turned to the side by my slap, but he inexplicably bumped into the corner of the table. Bright red blood flowed out, and he suddenly fainted. Vivian Carter looked at me in disbelief. "Brian Smith, are you crazy? You just answered a phone call and inexplicably attacked Ethan?" I grabbed her collar irrationally. "What exactly did you do at the hospital? What exactly did you say to my mom?" Vivian Carter was Afra. ID that I would hurt Ethan Campbell, and pushed me away. My injured lower back was hit again, and I was in so much pain that I couldn't stand up anymore, and instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Vivian Carter looked at me with cold eyes. "Ethan is a model. If he's disfigured because of you, don't blame me for showing no mercy." Her eyes were full of disgust and impatience, but I wasn't afraid to anger her. Show no mercy? What kind of showing no mercy? Her face was cold and stern. "Your mom is still in the hospital. If you don't want her medical bills to be cut off, then be honest." My face was pale, and I was completely heartbroken. But she didn't care at all, and nervously called the nanny to help the fainted Ethan Campbell leave. I shouted at her back, "Cut it off. Anyway, my mom is already dead. What does it matter if you cut off the medical bills?" Her body stiffened, and she turned her head to look at me stiffly, and finally threw down a sentence. "To keep me, you really will stop at nothing." After being sent to the hospital, I seemed to hear nothing. "You almost injured your spinal nerves. If it was a little further off, you would have been paralyzed. If I hadn't discovered it in time, you would have been in a wheelchair for the rest of your life." My good brother poked my forehead with one finger, his words full of resentment that I couldn't live up to his expectations. I bitterly stretched my lips towards him, my mom. His face was full of sadness. I've already taken care of Auntie's affairs, waiting for you to cremate and bury her. As soon as I nodded, Vivian Carter's phone call came. I gestured for my brother to hang up, but he quickly answered. The other side immediately began to accuse me. Where did you go? Ethan can't participate in the supermodel competition because you scarred his forehead. Are you satisfied? I just went to the hospital. Mom is fine. She's recovered and been discharged. Can you stop causing trouble? I don't think you need to come to the company anymore. Just give your position and the projects you have in hand to Ethan as compensation. My hands trembled as I took the phone. I don't know what you're talking about. My dad died in the hospital because you didn't transfer money to me in time, and even my mom was angered to death by you and Ethan Campbell, and now you're actually asking me to give my position and projects to Ethan Campbell. Don't you think you're taking things too far? Vivian Carter sneered. Taking things too far? Ethan explained to you time and time again that there's nothing between us, but you insisted on suspecting us. Weren't you taking things too far? You pushed Ethan down, causing him to be disfigured and unable to fulfill his dreams. Aren't you taking things too far? If I had known you would become like this, we might as well have never started. The phone was hung up directly, and when I called back, it was a busy signal. The company's position and projects were all what I had worked hard to get. What right did she have to transfer them to Ethan Campbell without my permission? The last bit of affection I had for her completely disappeared. After calming down, I sent a message to my tutor. I am willing to participate in the project. In exchange, I hope you can cancel your cooperation with Smith Enterprises. The other side immediately replied, no problem. Wasn't she wanted to calm down? Then I would let her calm down properly. There was no need for a divorce agreement. I would directly entrust a lawyer to file for divorce. Every penny she spent on Ethan Campbell, I would recover. Everything in her company, and even everything under her name, I would take back half of what belonged to me. After handling Mom's funeral arrangements with my brother, I buried her with Dad. After leaving a sum of money for my brother, I turned around and boarded the plane to go abroad. I deleted all of Vivian Carter's contact information, including Ethan Campbell's. But before that, I copied all the evidence of Ethan Campbell's close contact with Vivian. From then on, I had nothing to do with Vivian Carter anymore. After getting off the plane, a call from back home popped up. Guessing who it was, I hung up directly, not wanting to answer at all. But the other side kept calling back, and after being blacklisted, they would change the number and continue. I didn't get angry but laughed, took a deep breath and answered the phone. She questioned me in a low voice with anger. Where are you? I was silent and didn't say anything, and the other side clicked her tongue irritably and said as if she was extremely angry, you're really great. You found a divorce lawyer for no reason, and you didn't even show your face. Do you want to rebel? I didn't know what she was angry about, and even felt that she was very ridiculous. She was tired of me. She felt that I was disturbing her and Ethan Campbell, and she also felt that I had hurt Ethan Campbell. Since that was the case, I took the initiative to withdraw, and gave the space back to them, so why was Vivian Carter still unwilling? I hung up the phone without saying a word, and after removed the phone's SIM card and turned it off, I got in the car and went to my destination. Back then, I gave up the opportunity to study abroad for Vivian Carter's sake. The tutor regretted it very much, and persuaded me several times, and even used connections to help Vivian Carter's company, just to persuade me to go abroad with her to be responsible for a project. But I all politely refused, only because Vivian Carter said that she had been abandoned before and could not accept a long-distance relationship. But those compromises and concessions I made for her, over time, had turned into something that was taken for granted in her eyes. As soon as I arrived downstairs at the dormitory, Vivian Carter was unexpectedly standing not far away. Her slender figure was lonely and proud, and her whole body exuded an aura that was not easy to mess with. I stood still and didn't move, wanting to turn around and leave, but I was discovered. Vivian Carter walked forward a few steps and said unhappily, "Why did you leave without saying goodbye?" "Just because of what I said." I dodged her touch, just because of those. She didn't care about my affairs, and she didn't care about my parents. There was only Ethan Campbell in her eyes, so why should I cling to her? Hearing my answer, Vivian Carter seemed to suddenly laugh angrily, and held her forehead with a speechless expression. "If you hadn't hurt Ethan, how could I have said those things without thinking? Do you know that he's going to sue you? You disfigured him. If I hadn't suppressed it for you, you would have gone to jail a long time ago." Her tone was excited, as if I had committed an unforgivable sin. I raised my eyes and looked at Vivian Carter. "Whether you believe it or not, his disfigurement has nothing to do with me, and I don't need your self-righteous help." Vivian Carter raised her hand and grabbed me. "Brian, stop it. Can we not quarrel?" The gazes of the people around us gradually fell on us. Some were curious and some were scrutinizing. But I didn't give her any face, and directly shook off her hand, with a cold expression. "Besides the divorce, there's nothing to talk about between us." The estranged tone made Vivian Carter's body stiff, and a few complicated expressions of entanglement and pleading seemed to flash in her eyes. "Husband, why are you so stubborn? He and I are really just siblings, and there's no problem between us that can't be solved. Why do you have to get a divorce?" I looked up and met her gaze, my throat dry. "There are 2 lives between us. How can you ask me to continue with you?" She frowned and asked in confusion, "What 2 lives? Don't talk nonsense." I took a long breath, preparing to explain it to her clearly. Vivian Carter raised her hand and wanted to grab me, but she was interrupted by a phone call. On the other end of the phone, I heard Ethan Campbell's voice. It was still some suicidal words. A grown man, using green tea tactics was really easy to use. Vivian Carter frowned, hesitated for a moment, then turned her head and solemnly instructed, "Wait for me to come back to you. Our affairs haven't been resolved yet." After speaking, she left with hurried steps. At the same time, I received another provocative message from the other party. It was another strange number. How many cards did they have? As soon as I saw the message, I knew it was from Ethan Campbell. "Since you've gone abroad, don't come back. You can't beat me. When it comes to choosing between 2, you're always the one who gets abandoned. Haven't you straightened out your position yet? Anyway, your parents are dead. There's nothing to miss back home. I'm right, aren't I? Failure is your destiny. Be sensible. I can give you some living expenses. If you're not sensible, don't wait for Vivian to force you to leave with nothing." Touching the pain in my lower back that hadn't completely disappeared, I pulled the number into the blacklist with a blank expression. Before going abroad, I watched the surveillance video in the mansion. Ethan Campbell clearly bumped into the corner of the table himself, so his disfigurement had nothing to do with me. What's more, he was definitely inseparable from the death of my mother. He wanted me to obediently accept my fate, but I wouldn't let him get his wish. Ethan Campbell thought that the company was Vivian Carter's alone, but he didn't know that I founded it with her, and it was I who tried my best to pull projects and talk business, so that Smith Enterprises could be what it is today. Vivian Carter transferred flights 3 times in a row to return back home as quickly as possible. Arriving downstairs at the hospital, Ethan Campbell had already climbed to the top floor, and the gauze on his forehead hadn't been removed yet. Okaying at the gentle older brother who used to stand behind her turning into what he was now, Vivian Carter had an unspeakable sense of helplessness. She persuaded in a soft voice, "Let's talk nicely about what's going on. Can you come down first?" Ethan Campbell chuckled and stared at her obsessively. "I was disfigured by your husband and lost my career. You even abandoned me to go find her. What's the point of me living? Seeing Vivian Carter staring at him with guilt, Ethan Campbell immediately reminded, if my parents hadn't helped your family back then, how could they have been found by their enemies? How could I have become an orphan? Ethan Campbell looked at Vivian Carter in great pain. I just wanted you to care about me more. I just don't want to be alone. Am I wrong? He stood on the edge of the top floor, teetering, his hair fluttering in the wind. Looking at Ethan Campbell like this, Vivian Carter compromised again. I won't let you be alone. Can you come down? A flash of triumph flashed in Ethan Campbell's eyes, but he was still unrelenting. If I hadn't been afraid of being hunted down by my enemies back then, I wouldn't have gone abroad. But you turned around and married Brian Smith. You betrayed me. I want you to divorce Brian Smith. Vivian Carter suddenly looked up at Ethan Campbell, with shock, entanglement, and guilt mixed together. As Ethan Campbell stretched out his left foot towards the sky, Vivian Carter finally helplessly turned into a sigh. Okay. Seeing Ethan Campbell rushing downstairs with tears in his eyes, the firefighters who had laid out the rescue air cushion below finally breathed a sigh of relief. Ethan Campbell hugged Vivian Carter tightly. I knew you cared about me the most. After saying those words, Vivian Carter's heart was full of bitterness and regret, and a sense of emptiness of loss. Opening her phone with anticipation, there were no calls or messages. Suddenly, a news item popped up, the scheming methods of the form. Urging family's young master to frame his childhood sweetheart's husband. Clicking on it, it was the video inside the mansion that day. Brian Smith slapped Ethan Campbell in the face, but he deliberately twisted his body and bumped into the corner of the table in the opposite direction. And she subconsciously raised her hand and pushed Brian Smith away. The angle of the camera clearly captured the scene of Brian Smith's lower back hitting the edge of the table and being injured, and even his pale face was all captured. Ethan Campbell hugged Vivian Carter and touched her hair with ease. Vivian, when will you divorce Brian Smith? Can you make him leave with nothing? Vivian Carter looked stiffly at the scene on the phone, and the comments below made her even more overwhelmed. Ha ha ha, the reverse framing. The person slapped him on the left, so how did he fall to the right? This framing is too clumsy. Even if it's clumsy, there are people who believe it, right? Her own husband fainted in pain and she didn't care, but she felt sorry for the scheming mistress. The world has turned upside down. No wonder Ethan Campbell's family went bankrupt. This kind of man doesn't deserve to live a good life. Vivian Carter was a little unsteady, and Ethan Campbell finally realized it, turned his head and found that she was actually holding her phone and watching a video. As soon as he saw the scene above, Ethan Campbell's face suddenly turned pale. He explained to Vivian Carter in a panic, "It's not what you think, listen to me." Vivian Carter shook off Ethan Campbell. "Don't touch me." The crowd who had just watched Ethan Campbell jump off the building also recognized him, and their sympathetic gazes instantly turned into disgust. Ethan Campbell completely panicked, but Vivian Carter didn't want to listen to his explanation. As soon as I thought of misunderstanding Brian Smith and speaking harshly to him, Vivian Carter was full of guilt. But before she could go to Brian Smith to make peace and apologize, her phone was suddenly called again by a strange number. "Hello, are you Mr. Lynn's wife? Robert Smith and his wife are your parents-in-law, right? Their graves were washed away by landslides caused by continuous heavy rain. We can't contact Mr. Lynn, so we can only find a way to contact you. Do you have time to come over and deal with it?" Vivian Carter stood there dumbfounded. What did you say? She had clearly gone to the hospital and seen that only her mother-in-law was hospitalized, and it wasn't a big deal. Why did the other person say that their graves were washed away by the mudslide? Ethan Campbell didn't hear what was said on the phone, and reached out to touch Vivian Carter with trepidation, but was suddenly pushed away. The unprepared Ethan Campbell was pushed to the ground, and his palms were instantly scraped and bleeding. But Vivian Carter acted as if she didn't see it, and ran to stop a car. After taking a taxi to the cemetery in a daze, Vivian Carter finally believed the scene before her eyes until she was led to the collapsed tombstone. Her lips trembled, and she couldn't say a word. Tearing at the soil with bare hands, fingernails ripped and bleeding, yet I felt nothing. I wiped the headstone clean, revealing the inscription, "Devoted Son, Brian Smith." Stubbornly, I dug out another headstone, trying to find my own name. But it only read "Devoted Son, Brian Smith," with no mention of a daughter-in-law. Vivian Carter stared at the tombstone, eyes bloodshot. "You wouldn't even add my name? Are you really cutting me off?" No one answered. It was then that Vivian finally understood why I said there were two lives between us. Fresh off a breakthrough on a project, Vivian appeared outside the classroom, disheveled and desperate. Not wanting to be the center of attention, I reluctantly walked over to her. "What do you want?" she asked. Her emotions spiraled out of control, and she grabbed my hand, her voice hoarse. "I'm so RRY. I was wrong." I didn't understand her apology, but I had no intention of forgiving her. If this had happened months ago, when Mom and Dad were still alive and well, I might have been happy to accept her apology. But now, I only felt disgusted. "I told you, the only thing we have to discuss is the divorce." The bell rang, signaling the end of class. I pushed her away and turned to leave. Vivian, unwilling to give up, followed me pleadingly. Seeing her persistence, I sighed and pulled her aside. "You're here to find me. Where's Ethan Campbell?" The triumphant words of Ethan echoed in my mind, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of irony. Vivian immediately shook her head in denial. "Ethan and I have nothing. He was just like a brother to me, now he's a stranger." I raised my eyes to meet hers, a sneer on my face. A stranger? He was the brother she would rather abandon her husband than let go of, and now he was willing to be a stranger? Seeing my mocking expression, Vivian closed her eyes in pain, looking at me with a pleading expression. "He deceived me. I was just blinded by him for a moment. If it wasn't for the fact that he saved my life, how could I have tolerated him in every way?" Vivian grabbed my hand, her tone becoming more and more agitated. "I thought you disfigured him, so I gave him your position and project, but he deceived me, he used me." The instant our skin touched, I instinctively pushed Vivian away, my disgust unmasked. Vivian looked at me, panicked and helpless. "You." I avoided her touch, my eyes icy cold. "You thought?" As if a simple "you thought" could cover up the sins she had committed. There was no such thing in the world. If you hadn't made an excuse to trick me into going to hometown, my dad wouldn't have been late to the hospital and his condition wouldn't have worsened. If you hadn't hung up on me, my dad wouldn't have been left to die because he didn't have money for medical treatment. If you hadn't brought Ethan to my mom, how could she have been so angry that she died? Vivian's pupils trembled, and she looked at me in disbelief. "No. Mom didn't die of anger, we didn't say anything that day." She denied it subconsciously, but she couldn't produce a shred of evidence. For the first time, I regretted knowing this woman. Vivian's hands trembled, but she still didn't give up. "We really just chatted with Mom that day and brought her gifts. We didn't say anything else." I expressionlessly played the video. In the video, Vivian turned to pay the bill, and Ethan stood at the door of the hospital room and said something. Mom came out. Ethan looked at Mom mockingly and said, "Your son is the one who's a third wheel, clinging to Vivian because he's after her money. He used his own father as an excuse to ask for money a few days ago, and now he's using his own mother as a trick to gain sympathy. Don't you think he's despicable? Just a money-oriented. What right does he have to stop Vivian from getting a divorce?" Mom was so angry that she wanted to hit him, but Ethan grabbed her wrist. "Don't move around with your old bones, or Brian Smith will have to arrange your funeral arrangements. Be smart and persuade your son to get a divorce. Don't occupy what doesn't belong to you." After speaking, he swaggered away. Mom watched Ethan and Vivian walk away together, leaning close to each other, and finally she couldn't catch her breath and fainted. From then on, Mom never opened her eyes again. After watching the video, Vivian finally lost all her strength, her shoulders slumped, and she looked at me carefully. I really didn't know. She moved closer, but I avoided her. I said in a cold voice, "I won't let you off." The medical examiner said my mom died of anger, a cerebral hemorrhage caused by emotional agitation. You should understand what that means, right? Vivian looked at me stiffly, repeating mechanically, "I'm sorry. I really didn't think this would happen." Tears of remorse and helplessness streamed from her eyes, but I was not moved at all. I looked at Vivian coldly. "I'm going to file for divorce, and I'm going to sue Ethan Campbell." She looked at me bitterly, reaching out to me unwillingly. "If you want a divorce, I won't stop you. Ethan should be punished for angering Mom to death. I won't stop you from doing anything, but don't give up on me, and don't ignore me, okay? It was my fault before. I didn't manage my relationship with Ethan well. I realize that now. You don't have to love me, but don't stay away from me. We've been together for so many years. Are you really just giving up like this?" Her tone was almost pleading, a posture that the proud Vivian had never taken before. Perhaps realizing that she was about to lose me completely, Vivian was unusually humble at this moment. I still didn't say anything, making my attitude clear. Vivian stood there, dejected, waiting for me like that. I turned and left without a word, leaving behind a sentence, "Let's break up peacefully, that's the last thing I'll say to you." Vivian's regret was like a winter coat that was out of season, warmth that came too late. I don't need such useless things. I just needed them to pay the price. I had already entrusted the divorce lawsuit to a lawyer and chose to have the trial online. Every penny Vivian spent on Ethan, I would get back. If she didn't have money, she could wait to be sued and restricted. I also filed a lawsuit against her for intentional homicide at the same time. I knew I couldn't get the death penalty, but Ethan would never be acquitted either. His family had already gone bankrupt. If it wasn't for Vivian's support, he would never have lived such a carefree life. She couldn't afford to pay back the money, and she couldn't afford a lawyer. What I didn't expect was that the tuition money I was cheated out of when I was in school was actually Ethan's doing. The police saw the traces he hadn't deleted cleanly during the investigation. It turned out that he had resented me at that time, jealous of Vivian and my relationship, so he found someone to write code and cheat me out of the money. I suddenly remembered that I had just met Vivian at that time, but I was insecure and didn't dare to approach her. Ethan pretended to be Vivian and sent me a phishing link, telling me to click on it. I didn't guard against it for a moment and was tricked out of my tuition money. Ethan took that tuition money and bought a bottle of wine at a bar. In order to show me his determination, Vivian sent me several handwritten letters that Ethan had written to her. They were all begging her to hire a lawyer. Vivian swore, "I said I wouldn't interfere in your affairs, I won't pay attention to him." I didn't pay any attention to Vivian at all, because whether she interfered or not, it was a foregone conclusion that Ethan would be sentenced. The day the verdict came out was a beautiful day with clear skies. I held my parents' urns and reburied them in a place with singing birds and fragrant flowers. The tombstones back home were just two empty graves. Now that I decided to go abroad, my family should naturally be together. At first, I deliberately chose a new cemetery with loose soil and left my and Vivian's phone numbers on purpose, just to kill her heart. She loved me, but her love was not pure enough and she didn't trust me enough. Since she didn't trust me, let others discover it and let her verify it herself. But even so, she couldn't feel even a tenth of my pain. Vivian's company began to decline from the day the tutor withdrew from the cooperation. Bankruptcy was her fate. I took half of her wealth in shares. I sold the shares and turned them into cash as soon as possible, because keeping them would only lead to losses, and I didn't want to have any contact with her. I took out the general funds to do good deeds and helped elderly people who couldn't afford medical treatment. I also helped people who were trapped in marriage but couldn't get a divorce and provided them with free legal services. Because I knew very well that if I didn't have strong means, given Vivian's temperament, it would be impossible for me to get a divorce so easily. The day my tutor and I successfully researched the project, Smith Enterprises declared bankruptcy. The tutor excitedly patted me on the shoulder. "I knew you could do it." I smiled and raised the trophy. At the same time, Ethan Campbell was finally released from prison. He no longer had his former glory, but he still regarded Vivian as his last straw. After finding Vivian by all means, he used the same trick again, trying to rely on Vivian for life and death. But Vivian didn't have any true feelings for him now, only resentment. Ethan couldn't accept it and yelled at her stubbornly, "I saved you. I saved you. Why don't you care about me?" Vivian also went completely crazy, grabbing Ethan's hand and blocking him in the middle of the road. "I'll give you back this life. Can you please let me go?" Ethan struggled desperately, but Vivian held on tightly. She was so frightened that she collapsed on the ground. The sharp sound of brakes pierced the air, and the driver rolled down his window, enraged. "Are you ing looking to die? If you want to die, get out of the way." Vivian rushed to the front of the car. "Run me over! Run me over! I don't want to live anyway." Ethan looked at Vivian like she was crazy and bit her hard. Vivian released Ethan in pain, and he took the opportunity to run away in a hurry, never to be seen again. Seeing that Vivian was looking for death, the driver grabbed her collar and dragged her to the side, slapping her in the face. "If you want to die, don't bring bad luck to me. Get out of here." The flying dust choked Vivian, and she coughed nonstop. She suddenly realized the car in front of her was exactly the same as the first car she bought when she got married. She remembered that she had vowed ambit. Obviously at that time, "I will definitely let you live a good life in the future. I will buy you a car that is 1,000 times, 10,000 times better than this." The past scenes reappeared before her eyes, but Vivian knew clearly. It was no longer possible. It was no longer possible for her and I to have a future. The end.